name is Sterling Gildersleeve, and before we get our show started this evening, we'd like to take a few minutes to remember someone who was very special to us and to the show, Barbara Titone.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alex Roseborough, guest here tonight. And Sterling, thank you for inviting me. I'm really feeling honored, and even more so honored to have a comment about Barbara DeHart-Titone, the co-host of this program, who recently and suddenly passed away. Barbara Titone, DeHart-Titone, passed away on October the 13th, 2017, this year. Barbara Titone, Barbara was the executive director and founder for an organization called Recovery Education for Families, better known as REF. REF's mission is, and I say is because it hasn't been totally decided as to whether or not the organization will continue on, but REF's mission is dedicated to providing community-based workshops and seminars offering early intervention services and education to family members who are affected by a loved one with an addiction. I've known Barbara for at least 12 years, and I've had the opportunity to work with her on a few occasions on a few projects that she had where she presented parts of her REF program. Barbara was always a compassionate and professional. She always sought to improve the programs and services she offered. Primarily, she believed and often told me, in our conversations, that it was always most important that those families affected by a family member's addiction be provided the most helpful information and tools, to maintain or establish a healthy lifestyle or environment for the family and the addicted person. I don't think the way Barbara presented her work will ever be matched because her style was her style, and it was definitely from her heart. Barbara was REF, and REF was Barbara. She touched hundreds of families who are faring far better because of what she provided them. May fond memories of Barbara DeHart-Titone and the work she's done last forever through those she has touched personally and professionally. She certainly touched my life, and we'll surely miss her.
Thank you, Alex. And yes, Barbara certainly will be missed. I didn't have the privilege of knowing Barbara very long. Actually, we just met a few months ago as part of this project. But Barbara was someone who really had an impact on me personally. She was one of those people. She was a genuine person. I mean, if anyone met her, she was a genuine person. What you saw was what you got.
Yeah, what you got.
And she was a giving and caring person that it just showed. She was a person who lived life and enjoyed life, and she was so much of a caring person. She was one of those folks who gave freely of her time. This organization that she is so proud of and worked so hard for, the Recovery Education for Families, was something that she gave primarily from the goodness of her heart. She dedicated her time and efforts personally to make this happen, to make this work, and to be of service to people. So Barbara was truly a special person, and she was so very excited about doing this program. She was very excited about this happening.
Wow.
And we're certainly going to miss Barbara, miss her so very, very much. Yes, but in that, we want to make sure that we continue that mission, that we continue with the shows that we have remaining, that we're going to continue with the goal of providing recovery education for families and individuals, so that the goal and dream that Barbara had can continue. Again, I'm Sterling Gildersleeve, and Mr. Alex Rosenborough is our guest today. I want to thank you for coming out, Alex.
My pleasure.
Yes. And so our conversation today is going to be about the recovery and the recovery process. But I think to do that, I think the first thing we need to determine is what do we mean by recovery. And there's a definition by the Samsha, who writes all of the definitions for substance abuse and mental health services for the nation, and they say this recovery is a process of change through which an individual improves through health and wellness, lives a self-directed life, and strives to reach their full potential. Now that's the official definition, and that can encompass many different things. Recovery can be from illness, it can be from overeating, from gambling, but our primary focus in our series is going to be for substance abuse and mental health. We will be addressing substance abuse and mental health. And tonight, we will be focused on primarily through substance abuse. And in future shows, we will have individuals who are familiar with and versed in mental health services. But for today, our topic is going to be recovery as it relates to substance abuse. So, and Alex is going to be, I guess, a few questions we wanted to ask and get some feedback. And certainly we're open for our callers to give us a call. You have the number on the screen. Please be free to give us a call at 312-738-1080. Is that what it says? My eyesight is not what it used to be. Okay.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, all right. So Alex, then tell us, how does one get started in recovery from your experiences?
From my experience, I've seen people get motivated to get into recovery for a number of reasons, and I'll just say a few reasons which don't necessarily equate to having a long-term recovery. I mean, and it's just based on my experience and what I've seen. You know, some people want to get into recovery because they're being pushed by family members or the job, or some outside influence that says you need to stop drinking or drugging, and based on that person's relationship with whomever is suggesting or telling them to do this, that's one of the reasons why they get into it. Some people come to recovery because of some bad experience that they had.
Right.
You wake up one morning and you got 1,000 people telling you you did this, and it can't be. But if 1,000 people say you quack like a duck, you better look in the mirror.
Okay.
So I mean, it's that kind of way to recovery. But then there's a way that one starts to look at themselves internally and outwardly in regards to what their behaviors are causing them to do. And that could be recognizing that you had too much to drink because you had a car accident, or you almost ran someone over, and you say, oh my God, I have too many to drink, and I do this all the time, so I better check myself. And then there's another way to come into recovery when you recognize the harm, not only the harm that you're doing yourself, but you're doing harm to others as well. But there's just a number of ways, in my opinion, that can motivate a person to come into the recovery process. And it basically says, someone is recognizing that they have a problem, and they're being honest with themselves about recognizing something that they may not feel like they have control over, and they need to do something about it.
So you're saying that there's many roads to get into
Absolutely.
recovery. Absolutely, many roads to recovery.
Yeah.
So does an individual have to want to get into recovery? Like you say, these different avenues, like someone going to jail and they're forced into this thing. Are there successes with that?
Well, I believe that certain circumstances can put a person in a position that they have to recognize that there's something that they're doing, that's causing going to jail, causing having accidents, causing fighting with your spouse or doing something, or, just saying, that, man, I do this every weekend and this is the end results of what I do every weekend or every night or, this is what causes me, this is what the results are of me doing, drinking too much or, trying some substance that that just won't cut it, so to speak.
So consequences.
Consequences,
Person
that's
has
it, yeah, consequences,
and so-
yeah, consequences,
And
yeah.
then they recognize and then
Absolutely.
need for help. Huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Great. So a person can actually get help from the consequences. Say going to
Absolutely.
jail, and while they might not think they have a problem, once they get in these situations, can
Sure,
recognize that there's an issue and,
Yeah.
and that they might need to do something
And,
about it.
they had that going to jail, for an example, or some kind of confined situation where it's, they get a chance to recognize that certain things aren't happening to them now because of these particular circumstances. So consequences, I think that's a real big thing for those seeking recovery who are active in some form of addiction, whether it's like, you said earlier.
Yeah, and consequences indeed, and I think it's important to realize too that while there might be many consequences, I think that it's been proven too that an individual cannot get into recovery unless they choose to. It has to be a personal decision. I mean, the consequences can be severe, and there can be dire consequences that others might say, "Oh my goodness, they should stop for sure this time." But it really has to be a person's individual choice, I think, too, to say that, okay, I need to do something about this.
Yeah.
And it's a choice that an individual needs to make for themselves.
Absolutely. I have no problem self-disclosing my recovery, and I had been in and out of some rehabs and places like that. I attended meetings that were suggested to me, but I would venture to say that for me, I was attending them. Perhaps I had good intentions that something good was going to happen by me doing these things, but I hadn't totally made up my mind that that's what I wanted to do, and it was using substances and drinking alcohol. But I got to a point in my life, anyway, that it was dire. It was live or die, basically, live or die, and having to recognize that, I'll never forget it. The decision. I'm sure that in my experience, I had some help. I'll call it divine help, if you will. That's just for me. I recognized that I had a serious problem. Everything about me and everything around me just didn't make it. I surrendered. And that was for me. Just surrendering and saying, okay, it's either death, it's either jail, it's either in a mental health institution, or homelessness. I was already experiencing a little homelessness anyway. So, recovery. It's one making up their mind. That the lifestyle and all that comes with that has to end, and it's an internal thing. It's a personal thing. It's we can be encouraged by folks outside of us, but it's our decision that
That we have to make.
Yeah.
Another question is, what does it take to, once a person gets into recovery, what does it take for them to stay in recovery, in your opinion?
Well, in my humble opinion, I think once the person has decided to overcome the addiction that they have, or whether it's drugs or alcohol, that is probably, making that decision that you want to do something about it is probably going to be one of the biggest and most important decisions that a person can make in their life if they're dealing with alcoholism and substance abuse addiction. It's you know, it's I mean, there's a whole new adventure in living once you make that decision, you know, and you become committed to it. And there's certain things that one, I think, needs to take a look at, and that is, once I make that decision and whether I, you know, go and get treatment for this alcoholism or what have you, you know, and get that help, it's after receiving that, then we're talking about, well, what am I going to do now? So I say, for starters, if you get treatment or help, you know, then, you know, it's important that you look at what is being suggested and recommended that you do to maintain the treatment process. If you successfully completed the treatment, now we're talking, what do you do to keep it? And that's the recovery process.
Okay, so there's a maintenance side.
There's a maintenance side,
There's a maintenance
absolutely,
side.
absolutely.
Yeah, you know, I think sometimes we lose sight of that there is no cure for substance abuse or drug addiction. There is no cure. It's only a disease that can be maintained, that can be put into a kind of remission. But once you have that remission, it has to be maintained, or it'll come back. It'll come back in its full glory. So it has to be maintained. So you're saying that the tools that you use to get your sobriety, you need to continue to follow.
Absolutely.
To maintain that.
And you know, in some instances, the tools are things that we're told to try because they've been successful for other people who have come down the same kind of road, and they've been successful at staying sober, clean and sober. And you know, an example is, for me, one of the biggest things that ever, I mean, it was like a 50-watt light bulb that went off in my head. Somebody said, well, Alex, you just need to quit going around the places where you've been getting drunk and hot.
Okay.
You know, and that was one big push for me, you know, and I've seen it with others that, you know, and this work that I do with recovering and you know, people. That is one of the main things that one should consider, you know, removing yourself from the environment where you've been doing these things, you know. Of course, we have some folks who, you know, do it on their own by themselves. That's another piece that comes with the recovery. What do you do? But for many people, you know, it's the people that we tend to drink with and you know, use drugs with. So removing those folks. You know.
So you have to develop a new network.
Absolutely.
Network.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we have a caller. Yeah. Hi, caller.
Yes, and good evening, guys. How you doing today?
Hi. How are you
Good
today,
evening.
caller?
You know, I've just been catching it just for a few minutes. I have not once heard him say anything about sponsorship, the big book, meetings. You have to do other things that what you used to do and start trying to do something that is new. Again, the program works. It's just the ideal. You got to learn how to work it, and you can't work it by yourself. You got to. You know, there's a lot of people. Comprehension is one of the most very important things in this program, and I always take a dictionary. People always say, yeah, they understand, but they don't normally understand everything. That's why it's very important to have someone to sponsor you, to help you get through some of these things, get into book reading, get into group therapy. But what's the most important thing? You got to keep on making those meetings. You got to get behind those walls. And another good thing, even people that's been around a long time, it's good to go back to beginner meetings. You know, you hear those stuff, and you hear the things that's still out there. But again, good luck to you. And you haven't mentioned your recovery home or your where you go do your detox or anything like that. So can you please mention it? It will help people that who really need the work. Thank you for taking the call. Let me get out there so I can hear your response.
All
Thank you.
righty. Thank you, caller.
Thank you very
Yes.
much. Yeah.
Alex, you want to
Yeah,
address some of what
thank you. You sort of opened the door for me. I am, there's various resources and sources for one who wants to get into recovery and stay into recovery, such as I'll say the fellowship that you just mentioned, and I happen to be, a member of that fellowship, and yes, sponsorship, and let me just say a little something about this fellowship. There are people that put all kinds of different labels on it, it's a cult and it's this and it's that. But I'll say this, and I'm talking about the fellowship that I came through, and I hope we don't create any problems with that, but I come through the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to say that, and not taking or discrediting any other 12-step program, if you will. But I learned about sponsors, and I learned about things that I thought I knew about living and didn't really know, until a group of strangers embraced me and showed me, some things about living life on life's terms, and the meetings and those kinds of things, and they worked for me, and I don't say that it works for everybody, but I've seen tons, hundreds, if not thousands of people that it does work for, and I'm just talking about that particular piece, and there's others as well that work for people. But I come back to the thing that's, I think, very important, and that is a person recognizing that it's time for them to do something, about what's going on. Then wherever you decide to go to get the help, then that's key. But recognizing that, this can't keep going.
Right.
I can't keep living like this, and
I think you make a good point. Like you said, there are many different roads to recovery. The key is to recognize that there is an issue, and I think a big part of the recovery process is that what seems to work, that I've noticed seems to work the best, is a person has to, again, it's no cure, and so it's no just stopping. It's usually, as most for in rare occasions, certainly someone has the ability to just stop, but usually it requires a thing of substitution. Rather than doing this, I do this. I have to have something to replace the addiction or the alcohol, and so that can come in the form of self-help meetings. That also can come for others in the form of church for some, for others, some using medicated assisted treatment, such as methadone, Suboxone. And the thing with that is, it's an individual's choice. That's the thing about recovery. A person has to, it's one of the few diseases that you have to self-diagnose. The person who has the problem has to say, I have the problem. And then they get to choose what treatment they're going to take. There are many options out there, and if a person has an issue with alcohol or drugs, they have many options to choose from, whatever is appropriate for them. So you want to look at the different options that are available to you. Before we close, we want to just take a minute and in closing, is just to remember that the person who made all of this come about, the recovery education for families and individuals, is DeHart-Titone. A woman who truly will be missed. But we want to keep her alive through things like this. To let her know that her work is not in vain, because she was a real special person.
Absolutely. She made an impact on my life. We shared our personal experiences, and we were both called, if you will, and blessed to be able to channel those experiences into wanting to pass the good parts of the experiences back onto people and serving people in the recovery arena. Barbara, her family our hearts go out to her family, all of them, and we keep them in our prayers, and she'll be missed, and we prayerfully, hopefully, in some form or fashion, we'll be able to continue some of her work.
Absolutely. All right. So thank you, viewers, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.